Okay, today we're going to solve two-step equations again, but this time we're going to be focusing more on coefficients that are negative. So we're going to have some negatives involved. These are the steps to isolate the variable. So isolating the variable, that just means finding the missing variable, whether it be x or y or z or any of the 26 letters in the alphabet. We are just trying to find what number it represents. So the steps are identify the constant and the coefficient, add or subtract to cancel out or eliminate the constant, and step 3, multiply or divide to cancel out or eliminate the coefficient. So I highlighted these steps so I can go back and use them for my homework. Okay, so here's my first two practice questions. 4x plus 3 equals 27. First thing I like to do is I like to drop the bar. The bar tells me whatever I do to the one side, I've got to do to the other. And so after I drop the bar, I'm going to add or subtract to eliminate the constant. The constant's 3, so since it's a positive 3, I'm going to subtract to get rid of it. So I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. These go away because of the additive inverse property. And then 27 minus 3 is 24. And I'm left with 4x equals 24. The third step says multiply or divide to cancel out or eliminate the coefficient. The coefficient's 4 times x. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide each side by 4. So 24 divided by 4, x is now by itself, because 4 divided by 4 is 1. We just don't bother writing it in front of the x, it's that invisible 1. And 24 divided by 4 is 6, so x equals 6. Then I can use my knowledge of substitution, which we learned in the last unit, to check. So wherever there's an x, I'm going to replace it with a 6 in parentheses. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow PEMDAS here on the left side, because I want to see if it gives me 27. So when I follow PEMDAS, I've got to multiply first. So 4 times 6 is 24. Then PEMDAS tells me to add 3 next. And so when I do 24 plus 3, that's going to give me 27. And so since 27 equals 27, this equation is in balance, and I have solved it correctly. All right, let's look at this next example. 2 plus 4x equals 14. Again, I'm going to drop the bar, but now this example is a little bit different because the constant comes first. We're still going to get rid of the constant first, which is that number by itself, 2. So we're going to subtract 2 on each side. And we're left with 4x equals 12. And then we're still going to get rid of the coefficient next, which is that number in front of x. 4 times x, opposite of multiplying is dividing, so we're going to divide by 4. And so we find x is now isolated, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So x equals 3. Then we're going to use, again, substitution. So wherever there's an x in the original problem, we're going to replace it with 3 in parentheses. And for us to know whether or not we did this correctly, remember the check says that this whole thing on the left here needs to equal 14. So we follow PEMDAS. PEMDAS says to multiply first. So 4 times 3 is 12. And then 2 plus 12 is 14. So because 14 equals 14, we're in balance. Check. Okay. So the next two problems, 3 and 4, the only difference, the process is still the same. So I'm still going to follow these same 3 steps here above, except now my coefficient's negative. So remember, this is a calculator unit, so you can, if you're not very great at your integers rules, you can always use your calculator. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do here is drop my bar. Remember, I'm going to eliminate my constant. Constant's that number without a variable, so that's 9. So I'm going to subtract 9 on each side. And then I'm going to bring down the negative 5x equals 24 minus 9 is 15. And then now my equation reads negative 5x equals 15. And so since this is multiplication, I'm going to divide each side by negative 5 because the coefficient's negative 5. And x is now isolated. It's by itself because negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1 or 1x. And then now 15 divided by negative 5 is negative 3. So x equals negative 3. So when I go to check, remember again, you use your original equation. I'm going to replace x with negative 3 in parentheses. And I'm going to see if this entire left side here that I've highlighted, I'm going to see if it gives me, when I follow PEMDAS, if it gives me 24. So PEMDAS says to multiply first. And remember, that's negative 5 times negative 3, which is 15. Then add second. 15 plus 9 is 24. And so since 24 equals 24, check. I'm in balance. Okay? So if for some reason the left side didn't equal the right side, that means that what you found for x, or the variable given, is not correct. All right, let's look at this next one. Again, for this example, 3 minus 2x equals 21. It looks like the constant is written first. So that constant's the number without a variable. So we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. And then those are going to go away because of the additive inverse property. We're going to bring down negative 2x equals, and then 21 minus 3 is going to be 18. And now this is, remember, when you bring down the 2x term, there's a negative with it. So you want to make sure you bring down that negative. And so this is negative 2 times x equals 18. Opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide each side by negative 2. X equals negative 9. Now we're going to check our work. So we're going to replace x with negative 9. And we're going to see that when we follow PEMDAS on the left side here, that it should equal 21. So PEMDAS says to multiply first. Be careful here because you're multiplying a negative 2 times a negative 9, which is a positive 18. So that negative sign goes away. PEMDAS says to add next. 3 plus 18 is 21. And since the left side equals the right side, we are in balance, and it works. Check. Okay, so we're on the back side now, and I'm going to go ahead and skip numbers 5 and 6, because when I'm finished with this video, I want you to try those on your own. And I'm also going to skip numbers 9 and 10, because I also want you to try those on your own. So I'm going to do 2 more examples. So I'm going to do 7 and 8. So again, remember, the first step to solving a two-step equation is to drop your bar. This allows you to remember whatever you do to the left side of the equal sign, you need to do to the right side of the equal sign. Next thing is you identify the constant. The constant's that number without a variable. Since it's a negative 3, you want to do the opposite. So you're going to add 3, add 3. These 3's are going to go away because of the additive inverse property, and 5 plus 3 is 8. And I brought down the negative 8x term. Now the equation reads negative 8 times x equals 8. So since it's multiplication, you want to multiply or divide. You want to do the opposite. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide each side by negative 8. And x is 8 divided by negative 8, negative 1. Next thing we want to do is check our work. So we've got negative 8 times negative 1. Remember, we plug it in using parentheses, just like substitution. And then we follow PEMDAS. So we want this entire left side, after we follow PEMDAS, we want it to equal 5. So PEMDAS says to multiply first. So we're going to do negative 8 times negative 1 first, which is 8. And then 8 minus 3 next, which is 5. And so since 5 equals 5, this works. Okay? Remember, if you forget the steps, they're on the first side of the notes. All right, last example I'm going to do with you is number 8. Again, I'm going to drop the bar, and I'm going to identify the constant. The constant is that number without a variable. So we've got negative 6, so we're going to add 6. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to bring down the negative 7x. We're going to bring down the equals, and 8 plus 6 is 14. Then we have negative 7 times x equals 14. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide each side by negative 7 to get x by itself. Remember, the coefficient's negative 7, and negative 7 divided by negative 7 is 1 or 1x. And then 14 divided by negative 7 is negative 2. So x equals negative 2. Last thing we're going to do is check our work. We're going to use substitution. And so substitution, again, remember, means to replace the x with what you found x equals, which is negative 2. And when we substitute, we use parentheses. And the check, the purpose of the check is to see if this left side, after you follow PEMDAS, if it equals 8. So negative 6 minus 7 times negative 2, I need to multiply first. And negative 7 times negative 2 is positive 14. The next step for PEMDAS is negative 6 plus 14, which is 8. And so since 8 equals 8, check. Okay, so now what I want you to do is I want you to try 5 and 6 and 9 and 10 on your own. Don't forget to also attempt the check. That's a really good tool that you want to use so that you're always checking your work and you can do well in this unit. All right, good luck.